Amber's testimony has many discrepancies with her earlier given statements. Watch till end to see how Amber destroys her own defense.
I do. All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name?
Yes, it's Amber Laura Hurd.
There come a time that you reconciled after Australia?
Yes, because it almost felt like it went away so quickly because there was this surgery that he needed, and there was maybe he had more than one surgery, but it was, like it became very, very about getting Johnny through the next step. Getting Johnny home, getting Johnny off the coke long enough to get the procedure done, and then after that procedure, getting another procedure done. And it was just these small steps, and before you know it, we were kind of back in it. With the prospect, of course, of him being done with all the drugs and drinking, because that's what necessarily had to happen for him to have this surgery. So that made me feel a little bit more secure and kind of coming back into this relationship with him.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to March 23, 2015, which is a few weeks after, 2.5 weeks roughly after Australia. Where was Johnny staying at this point?
I think he was staying at the Eastern Columbia, at the ECB. Yeah, he was staying at the ECB at the time because we were kind of in the bedroom together the night of the 22nd, which is when he passed out, how I found his iPad.
I'm sorry, when you...
I found his iPad open. He was texting someone with it open. He passed out, and I saw what he was texting.
Please tell the jury about that.
He was texting this woman that he had a relationship with on and off, kind of at the beginning of our relationship. So I recognized the name, but the date was right after the wedding. I saw it. He had gone to her house after we got married. Like, upon touching down in Los Angeles, I think it was the next day, he went to this woman's house that he has this sexual relationship with. And
What did you do as a result of seeing that on the iPad?
I freaked out. I immediately, confronted him about it. I was, I didn't care in that moment if he did kill me, which is likely in confronting him at that stage of our lives. I didn't even care anymore. At this moment, he had already ripped my heart out. I've just been through after having been through what I went through in Australia. Just weeks prior, I see this. It was like, unbelievably painful. Unbelievably painful.
So what did you do?
I'm yelling at him. So yelling. I was calling him all these ugly names. I was screaming at him. Told him to get the fuck out of the house. That's what I said. Excuse my language, but we were screaming at each other. At some point, we were upstairs in penthouse 3, and we kind of get into a how do you describe it? Pushing each other, you know. And I just remember being so mad at him for cheating on me and doing so in this way, like right after the wedding. And then right after my wedding, go to see him, and then Australia happens, and it just felt like everything came crashing down, and I was so hurt. Anyway, I break out of his grasp at some point, and I go into my sister's room. The apartments in the ECB are connecting, at least 3 of them are, and they connect from upstairs only. So you could get from Johnny and I's apartment into the neighboring apartment where Whitney, my sister, was staying at the time. And then you could go from that apartment into penthouse 5, again, still on the top floor. So I went through Johnny's office, which is how you access the door that gets you into Whitney, the neighboring apartment where Whitney was, my sister. And I went in there and woke her up crying, screaming, saying, "What am I going to do?"
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sorry.
Sustained.
I don't know, that was Daffer to prove the truth of the matter.
I'll
Certainly,
sustain.
in any event. All right.
Sustain the objection.
Okay, so you went to Whitney's. Don't tell the jury what you said to her, but what happened next?
Johnny comes into penthouse 4 and grabs me. I don't know why. I don't know what he was doing, but at one moment I I'm aware that my sister's somewhere nearby, and I thought about that. I just remember thinking about that, and he, I remember getting kind of free from Johnny, and he left, or he walked out of the room.
When you say free from Johnny, what, if any, connection did you have? The physical connection before that?
Well, I mean, I'm, trying to stand up for myself, and Johnny would, at that stage in our relationship, he would just throw me, shove me, hit me in the face. I mean, it was just like, all I could do is just try to fight back, or try to not get more hurt than not doing anything would have certainly left me. I don't really recall specifics. I remember at one point he had his uncasted hand in my hair, and I was looking at the carpet. I don't know what happened immediately after that, but I remember he left. He was out of the room for a while. I don't know how we got into, I think I heard him in P5. Again, this is the neighboring apartment of that. So there's P4 in between, and P5 is the corner. And that apartment was empty, basically. And so I used it, the top bedrooms, the bedrooms on the top floor as my closet. And I had all these clothing racks and shoe racks and stuff like that in there. And then it had another level, the mezzanine, which is it hung over the rest of the bottom floor. And I use that as my office. And the bottom floor is, of course, the living room with just some sparsely decorated, just some big couches and a low table. And I I hear him in penthouse 5. And on the lower level also is another painting studio, like painting area of mine. So I go in there because I hear him, and he's screaming, but I don't know why. I don't know who he's. My understanding was he was screaming at me, but I wasn't in that apartment. I could hear him, and when I heard him, I came into penthouse 5, and I have to go down the stairs and and I went down the stairs to the mezzanine level where my office was, and I could see him and a security guard and Debbie, the nurse, and he was sitting on the sofa when I first walked into the room, and he kind of stood up. He was drinking Red Bull and screaming at me, and Debbie came up the stairs because I'm screaming back at him. She came up the stairs, I think. And while she came up, I'm supposed to kind of comfort me. And while I was up on the mezzanine floor, Whitney came down, and he threw the Red Bull can up at me, certainly, but it kind of either hit or narrowly missed Debbie. And I said I called him a pussy, and said something about, I'm screaming at him angrily. I at least called him a fucking pussy. I don't know what else I said, but I was screaming at him because he threw this can at me and everything else that had happened. And when I did that, he bolted up the stairs. And, there's only, he was up the first flight of stairs. Again, I'm on the mezzanine, which is in between two flights of stairs. He bolted up the steps, and I don't know how he managed to get his hands in my hair so fast, but he had his hand on the back of my head, my hair, and kind of was yanking me down and hit me in the face with this cast he had. I just remember this brief struggle we had before we kind of break away. Whitney, my sister, all of a sudden put herself in between Johnny and I. She just threw herself like in the line of fire or whatever. She just all of a sudden was there and was trying to get Johnny to stop. Her back was to the staircase, and Johnny swings at her, and I just see my little sister with her back her back to the staircase, and Johnny swings at her, and I don't even wait for any other, I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just in my head instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him. In all of my relationship to date with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow. And I, for the first time, hit him, like actually hit him, square in the face. He didn't push my sister down the stairs. And all my time of being in that relationship to that point, hadn't even landed one on Johnny. Sure, I had tried to fight back, threw my arms, flailed my arms, hit whenever I could to try to block blows myself, but never landed anything. And Johnny kind of looked stunned and then laughed at me, and then lunged at me again. And before I know it, security stepped in between us and pulled Johnny away. And I went upstairs with my sister, and we locked the door, and I could just hear all this commotion happening in Penthouse 5. I could hear him raging, destroying my things. I could hear it. And at some point I saw it the next day.
Tell the jury what you saw the next day.
All my clothing racks were toppled over, shoe racks toppled over, thrown down the stairs. Desk, everything on my desk wiped off. Just it looked like everything that he could touch, he tried to turn over, destroy, smash, But my clothing racks, these huge, heavy clothing racks full of clothes, there was at least one of them he threw down the stairs. The rest were toppled over.
Amber said during March 21, 2015 incident that she never landed a blow.
To the Adderall Diaries. When did you start filming the Adderall Diaries?
Believe May. I filmed another movie in New York, March, April, May. I went straight from that movie to another movie, an independent film with James Franco. The one I had previously shot was with Christopher Walken. That's right. Okay, so I went from one to the other and saw Johnny in these, in between. Like if I got a long weekend or, I'd fly home to be with him and then fly back. It was kind of like that.
Fly back from where? Where were you filming those?
In New York.
Okay. And where was Mr. Depp at that time?
Johnny was in LA at the time and then eventually went on location for his movie, Black Mass, in Boston.
So you were in New York and Mr. Depp was in Boston at some point?
Eventually, by May 2014. That's it.
All right. And what, if any, discussions or arguments did you have with Mr. Depp relating to James Franco in that time frame of May 2014?
It's a nightmare. I wanted to do this independent film. I liked the story. I liked the character. I told him I'm not going to wear makeup in the thing.
Objection, hearsay.
Apparently,
Ms. Bureau, if you could approach, please.
so tell the jury what Mr. Depp said.
He was mad at me for taking the job with James Franco. He hated James Franco and was already accusing me of kind of secretly having a thing with him in my past since we had done Pineapple Express together.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to the Boston plane incident. We've heard about that earlier, May 24. Can you please describe for the jury what took place on May 24 relating to the plane incident?
Well, I had spoken to Johnny, he's in Boston, I'm in New York, and I spoke to him. He had already been upset with me and accused me in many arguments about not telling him about scenes that I had, if I had a kissing scene, any sort of romantic scene, and I wasn't explicit about what I was going to do. We'd go back to LA for his daughter's birthday. I was nervous because the conversation I had had with him, and he was so upset with me on that conversation, but I figured he'd I assumed he had passed out and that he would have been kind of sobered up the next day, assuming that the work would mean that he felt pressure to kind of pull it together. And I get on the plane. He sent the plane, so I assumed he's not that mad at me. He's over it. We're moving on. He's sobered up. There had been a lot of talk about a sober plan, like a full detox, a full recovery, a doctor, a whole plan. You know, there were talks of that following what had happened in London. So I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe we're here. And I get on the plane. It touches down and the SUV pulls up and it sits on the tarmac for a very long time. He knows I'm on the plane waiting for him. So I kind of started to anticipate that things weren't as I hoped, meaning that he was sober and had slept it off. And I'm sitting on the plane for a very long time waiting for him, and he finally opens the door, and I see him get out of the SUV, and I can guess by how he's moving, how he's walking. I didn't realize at the time I had already become really sensitive to these little changes because my life changed depending on what he was on. And he gets on the plane, and I just knew in every cell of my body something was wrong. And he comes straight up to me, doesn't say anything to me, but is looking at me. He's got these glasses on, and he takes them off in this kind of aggressive manner and sits down across from me, not in the usual spot. We'd kind of have our places on his plane, you know, where you get used to sitting. And I remember I got up and moved to accommodate him getting by so he could sit in the normal seat as per usual. He didn't. He sat across from me. At some point, and I don't really remember the exact sequence of it, we take off, and at some point he's asking me what's wrong with me, what do I have? Do I have something to tell him? Do I have something to tell him? You want to talk to me about your day yesterday? And then it gets, I already know that he's drunk. I already know he's using, he reeks of weed and alcohol. I mean, his breath smelled so bad, and I could, I could anticipate that there was a no-win situation here. There was no me talking myself out of this or talking him down or any, you know, a lot of my arguments and my involvement in them are me trying to diffuse by explaining or
Objection, non-responsive.
She's telling the story, Your Honor.
I'll sustain an objection as part. Good. Okay.
So he is asking me questions, and I know to not engage. I was polite. I made sure to answer minimal amount of, you know, the minimal amount that I could. I moved slowly. I was trying to be polite, but not engage because there was no win. And he kept going, kept asking me. Eventually he went from, do you have something to tell me, to, you want to tell me how much you liked it? Tell me, did he slip a tongue? It got worse and worse, just more. It went from asking me about how my kissing scene went or how the sex scene went to asking me what James Franco had done in the scene, to being really explicit about my body. You know, he was talking about he was saying really disgusting things about my body, about how I liked it, how I responded, and then he started just straight up taunting me. I know you liked it. He called me a go-getter. He called me a slut in front, and also this is happening with security and his assistants on the plane. And I remember I felt I struggle to be able to tell you how embarrassed I was because he was speaking to me in front of people in this way, asking me if I liked it and if I was wet. And, why I wasn't looking at him, and that was proof I wasn't looking at him. That was proof that I was asking for. Did I ask James to do this and this to me? And how about if he does those things to me? Insert sexually explicit descriptions of what he accused me of wanting or deserving. And I, at some point in this, get up and move to the front of the plane. And I remember getting up so slowly. I didn't want to aggravate him. I didn't want to give him any excuse to pounce on. I didn't want to upset him. I didn't want him to flip a switch and get worse. I just remember very slow movements. And I slowly get up and move to the front of the plane, and he starts throwing things at me. Ice cubes, utensils. He's calling me a go-getter, and then an embarrassment, talking about what an embarrassment I am. I don't know how many times I moved seats. I wish I did. I don't. I remember moving more than once, and Johnny came to me each time, not the other way around. He sits down in front of me at one point, and because I'm not answering him, I was looking out of the window, and he slaps my face. And his friend is in our proximity. And it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed. Did he do that to me in front of people? It was the first time that anything like that had happened in front of somebody. I got up to move again, and he's just taunting me, having a laugh, screaming, and then just straight up mean, calling me names. And it was oscillating between those things. And I get up slowly again, and I just resolve to just sit the rest of the time up at the front of the plane. And as I get up, he kind of kicks the swivel chair into my hip, kind of just hits me. And I look at him, and he asks me, what are you going to do about it? I just stared at him. I just stared at him and wanted him to see me. I wanted to get through to him. Didn't feel there was it felt like there was a blackness in his eyes. I wanted to look at him. I wanted him to see me. It didn't even feel like him. And as I'm walking away, slowly, trying not to be, I was being very deliberate about my movements, wasn't saying anything, I wasn't engaging. I am walking away from him slowly, and he tells me to hurry the fuck up. Hurry up. And I just look at him one more time, wanting to penetrate the monster to see the man that I love underneath that. The man I loved. And he tells me to hurry up again. And I pull my gaze away from him. I walk away from him. My back is turned to him, and I feel this boot in my back. He just kicked me in the back. I fell to the floor. I caught myself on the floor, and I just felt like I was looking at the floor of the plane felt like a long time. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I can't believe he just kicked me. No one said anything. No one did anything. It was like you could hear a pin drop on that plane. You could feel the tension, but no one did anything. And I just remember feeling so embarrassed. I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people. And more embarrassing, I didn't know what to do about it. I got up and I walked to the front of the plane. I sat down and I just looked out of the window.
She mentions that this part of her alleged abuse happened in front of people, so why not subpoena them and have them discredit her story?
Please like, subscribe and share your thoughts.